we don't want people scared to call us or scared to communicate. We want you to talk to us. We're in the business of um, legal services and legal relationships, right? We want to build a relationship with our client and hold on to them long term.
Hmm. Yeah. And again, I just really want to emphasize that because I know, like, I can remember distinctly back when I was 25 buying my first property, like, wait until the last minute to call the lawyer out of fear because I was thinking I was being frugal. Yeah. Just always reach out a little bit earlier, guys. What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and in today's video, we're going to sit down with a lawyer and just kind of walk through from the lawyer's perspective. How does a real estate transaction work? What does the closing process look like? What sort of costs can we sort of expect? And really just how should we be more prepared when it comes to closing, whether it's on your first property or your first investment property. And today we've got a great guest, Ryan from Carson Law. You guys know him. You've seen him on the channel before. Let's just jump into it. What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and I'm really excited for today's video. We've got Ryan from Carson Law back. Hey, Ryan, how's it going?
How you guys doing? Good, good.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited for this video because there's a lot of first-time buyers, a lot of first-time investors that watch my YouTube channel, and they're always intimidated, right? The first time you do anything is usually the scariest time. So let's talk about the closing process for someone that's maybe closing on their first property or their first income property. And if there's any differences, if you don't mind highlighting them for us as well.
Sure, sure. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say, there's any differences from a perspective of like we're always going to have to do the same base work, as a lawyer, right? I mean, we got to do title searches, we got closing documents, we're dealing with mortgages or lenders, we're dealing with, the buyer and collection of information. So we have a properly prepared and processed file, and it's not going to be any different, whether it's a single family use or for investment, right? I think where you start to see some differences, and it depends, I think, on two things: the type of the property, because if it's, say, a cottage, well, now our title search is got waterfront searches and like well and septic and maybe like a wet certificate, which is like a wood burning fireplace type thing. Like, so you can see right off the bat there, the property type potentially makes some nuances and changes for us. The other thing that I would say it drives a bit of difference is the people themselves, right? So the client or the parties involved in the transaction. So if it's for investment purposes and the property's like a tenanted property and we're going to assume it, well, now the question is, well, we got to probably review, leases and rent rolls and just verify terms of the lease itself, make sure that the tenants are aware that now all future rents are payable to, our client, the buyer. So those sorts of things. It's the type of property, but it's also the people involved in the deal and the type of deal, how the use is going to happen, that probably start to create some layers of difference.
Gotcha. Appreciate that. And so at what point in time should I be reaching out to a lawyer, and do I need a lawyer if I'm buying a property in Ontario?
Yeah, so pretty much, I know there are ways that I think you can buy real estate in Ontario without a real estate insured lawyer, but I think it's very few and far between for the general public.
Yeah.
Even the investor at large, you got to use a lawyer. So the simple answer is almost 100% of the time, at least for the people that are watching this video, you gotta have a lawyer. It's got to be a lawyer that's real estate insured. So with the Law Society of Ontario, a real estate lawyer pays an additional premium to be real estate insured. And so you want to make sure your lawyer and their law firm is real estate insured when they're closing a transaction. So sometimes it's funny, you see this a lot with generational decisions. So like the grandparents always use, Bobby Smith, lawyer. and then the parents use Bobby Smith, and then now the grandkids are going to use Bobby Smith. But Bobby Smith is actually a family lawyer and doesn't actually, know anything about real estate really at all,
Mm-hmm.
and is not real estate insured. So that's something you want to be careful about. I would say you always want to get us involved as early as you can. I won't be offended if you reach out to me early and we have a quick chat and we realize, okay, it's a bit early. Let's circle back a week from now or a month from now or whatever, or these are the next things that I need you to do before we really get engaged. Because that's the only thing you can't get back is the time in the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you leave things to the last minute, or you say, oh, I don't think I probably need Ryan yet, or the law firm, but you did, then we start getting compressed. And that's when, I don't want to say mistakes happen, but that's when things get more stressful, right? And for the client, for the law firm, for everybody involved, you start to get, more panicked and worried, right? I mean, real estate transactions in the modern day, because everything's all land titles, everything's all electronic registration and searches, it's title insurance is way more prevalent and bulky. Things go a lot quicker now. Like what used to be a 60, 90, 120 day closing, like 60 is long now. Like closing a residential real estate transaction, whether it's single family use or multi-use, that's 60 days or longer in term, is very unusual. Most stuff is 30, 45 days max. We've seen even 2-week closings, which do not do. I am not advocating that. That's a surefire way to get yourself a little bit stressed out.
Yes.
30 days minimum is what I would say is make that kind of your quickest. I understand, especially with real estate investor deals, sometimes that's not possible. And it's, if you think it's too good to be true and you're going to lose it and they need a quicker closing, well, then certainly talk to your lawyer right away to make sure that A, that's a good idea, and B, it can be accomplished. Just procedurally, can this actually happen that quickly?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the other factor to consider when you think about the process of a deal and timeline of one, is if you need financing and insurance and money from down payments and savings and all this kind of stuff, it's not just in your control and the lawyer's control anymore. It's the bank, it's the insurance company, it's your savings, advisor. You got all of a sudden 3-4, groups of people that all have to get in sync here. And, as everybody knows, it's everybody's constantly busy. And so you want to make sure schedules are going to link up, and nobody knows everything about everybody's role in the process. I have a good idea generally of what the mortgage representative and the insurance representative and our client need to do to get me to a point to close a deal. But I don't know all the paperwork of the bank, or the insurance company. I appreciate that they're providing a professional service that takes time. And so that's where I think it's really important for the client to, get in touch with the lawyer as early as you can, be realistic about your timeline and the expectations. Because if you're realistic about it and everybody's up front, then it'll be one of those scenarios where you're hitting you're hitting or exceeding the expectation at the end of the day. You don't want to, over promise and under deliver ever, right? Or have this unrealistic expectation and then it just doesn't happen. And then you get either disingenuine with the process if it's a real estate investor, or you become maybe liable for, a breach of contract, and you don't want those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great point. And so with my audience, there's a lot of younger people that maybe have never actually dealt with a lawyer before, or especially a real estate lawyer. There's also, I talk a lot about financial independence, retiring early on my channel. So there's a lot of frugal people, the idea of calling a lawyer before I maybe need a lawyer sounds scary. Is the clock ticking the moment it happens? Am I going to get a big bill in the mail just randomly if I call you? How does this work with real estate transactions and lawyers?
Well, you're getting my bill right now, aren't you? Yeah, no, I mean, I understand that. I can appreciate that. I mean, we even though I'm a lawyer, I mean, I obviously work with other lawyers, sometimes personally and professionally. And so I can appreciate we're not the least expensive, group of people in the world. Um, me in particular, I don't do anything really by the hourly rate. Most of our stuff is charged out on what's called a block fee or a structured process. So you can call or email me as much as you want, and as long as it falls within our scope of retained services, our package, so to speak, um, you're not getting a bill that's going to be over and above what we provided an estimate for. So that's us. That's how we operate in almost all of our services. I mean, our retainer generally says if we go outside of the enumerated list of services, then there would be, for the time that's in excess, an hourly rate of charge. But we'll typically give you a courtesy update that, hey, this is what's happened. This is why this is going to be outside of the retainer. Probably going to be a couple hours more, at X dollars an hour. But that being said, that's pretty rare. We don't typically have that kind of scenario happen. We try to do almost everything where we can on a block pricing, so it's either a block fee because we had to do like a second mortgage, so there's extra work for that. So there's an extra fee for that, but it's not like by the hour. We just say an extra mortgage is $350, if you were getting a first and a second mortgage. Or this is a commercial deal as opposed to just single family residential. The block fee is, $1,500 or $2,000 for the commercial because it's more sophisticated, it's more work, there's more time involved versus, $750 on the single family residential, for example. Right. So we do most of our stuff block fee, so that, to your point, we don't want people scared to call us or scared to communicate. We want you to talk to us. We're in the business of legal services and legal relationships, right? We want to build a relationship with our client and hold on to them long term.
Yeah. And again, I just really want to emphasize that because I know, like, I can remember distinctly back when I was 25 buying my first property, like waiting until the last minute to call the lawyer out of fear because I was thinking I was being frugal. And again, the lawyer I happened to use had a similar kind of block fee service. And again, it's really important, that we be looping in our professionals at the appropriate time so that we can make that transaction smooth. Because as Ryan hit upon, there are multiple professionals on your power team that are going to need to coordinate or orchestrate together in order to synchronize the transaction and make sure everything closes in a timely manner. So it really is important to be a little bit proactive, reach out a little earlier rather than reach out a little later if you're going to, just always reach out a little bit earlier, guys.
Yeah.
So otherwise, go ahead, Ryan.
No, well said. Perfect. Because there's so many people involved, the power team, and just getting everybody involved early is great to do. It's important.
Yeah. And so I'm sure you've worked with lots of first-time buyers or first-time investors. Do you notice anything that seems to reoccurrently catch them off guard or surprise them just about the process or the transaction or how everything comes together?
I think the one thing that is kind of surprising is how people, and this is probably mainstream kind of media and just the dissemination of information and knowledge is so easy now. People think buying a house is almost a right. And like people, I would hope everybody could have home ownership, right? But it might not always be for everybody, right? It's not just a right that everybody should be able to buy a house. And number two, I always kind of joke with people in the office here and say, Oh, here we go. This guy thinks he's just buying a pair of jeans or pulling up to Mickey D's and getting a Big Mac. Like this is like a $500,000 purchase, or at least a couple
Mm-hmm.
100,000 or millions, right? This is probably the single largest transaction a person will do in their lifetime.
Yeah.
You're buying real estate. It's a process. Yes, to our industry's credit and our other colleagues out there, everybody's tried to really systemize and client centric the process, right? Like make it so easy. It's all rainbows and butterflies, as you said in one of your other chats with me. Let's make it really, really easy
Mm-hmm.
and almost seem like, oh yeah, that was easier than when I go into the mall and get a pair of jeans, or go on Amazon and go ding ding ding, right? I mean,
Yeah.
let's make it so easy for everybody that they think, well, they don't have any idea all the stuff we're doing. They think, oh yeah, that guy just took $600 off me and saw him for 10 minutes, right? 10 minutes for $600, that's pretty good, right? That's what they think,
Yeah.
which I can appreciate. If I wasn't, me, and I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
in this industry, I might think that of me too, right? But I mean, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that we do, and that's just what we do. Don't even think about like what does your mortgage broker have to do? What does your insurance broker have to do? What's your realtor doing? All these people are doing a lot of stuff to make this happen for you, right? So even though we try to shelter it and make it very customer and client centric and easy, especially with like the single family residential purchases, you want to make it very, very simple and comfortable and de-stress it all. It's a big deal. It's a big acquisition, and hopefully people listening to this won't lose sight of actually, how important it is. It's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, I want to emphasize it's important that you feel comfortable being able to talk and ask questions with your lawyer because, as Ryan said, it is a big transaction. For most people, real estate will be one of, if not the largest financial transactions and commitments they'll make. This is the time, before you close on the deal to make sure you understand what's going on, what you're committing to, and how it's all going to shake out.
Yeah.
And so, if you don't mind, maybe just explaining to people what's like a statement of adjustments, because I know this was something that when I was originally closing on my first property, I was like, like you're kind of like sitting there and you're like, I wonder exactly how much it's going to be. Is it literally just 20? If I commit to 20% down, is it just 20% down I'm going to be paying? What all goes on there?
Yeah. So the financial documents from the lawyer's perspective, I mean, obviously there's financial documents in a way that you're dealing with the bank on, but the financial documents, the statement of adjustments is one of them. It's kind of the foundational document because it's the document that references between the buyer and the seller, purchase price, deposit, usually a property tax adjustment. If it's a condo fee adjustment. If the property is heated with like propane or gas or oil, there's typically an adjustment for some utilities. And then there's balance due on closing, right? So credit the seller for the purchase price, credit the seller for the purchase price, credit the buyer for the deposit. Then depending on the way it shakes out, credit, the buyer or seller for property taxes, condo fees, utilities, balance due on closing to the seller, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this balance due on closing number then is transposed over to our trust ledger. And our trust ledger is all our in and outs to our trust account, like our lawyer trust account. So obviously we need to make sure we take this number that the buyers, that the other side's looking for, the seller's lawyer, and that's going to be the big exit. But we need to have money come in for that. So we need money in from the bank typically, and from the client themselves for the balance of the down payment. So those are the two inputs typically you'll see on the trust ledger. And then other than the balance due on closing to the seller's lawyer that's going out on the trust ledger, you're going to see typically an amount go out for registration fees. Right now in Ontario, the registration fee per document, so that's a deed or a mortgage or other document registered in the land registry office is $77.62. It typically goes up every month or quarter, about 25 cents or 15 cents or whatever. But so it's around $77.62 right now. And land transfer tax. So land transfer tax, it's not an exact percentage, but if you go online and you Google land transfer tax calculator, you'll find millions of them. You'll plug and play your purchase price in and you'll get your exact number. But it equates to about 1.5% to 2% of a purchase price.
Awesome. Yeah.
Unless you're a first-time buyer, in which case you get a $4,000 credit.
And a little side note here for anyone listening. We at cashflowtribe.com, we've actually got Canada's most robust online land transfer tax calculator. So you guys can check it out there if you're curious.
Well, that's good to know. I'm going to link to that.
Yeah, appreciate it. And so one thing I'd love to also just hear from you on, Ryan, is, COVID-19 and stuff has kind of changed the way lawyers are starting to do business a bit. So you're in Toronto right now shooting this. I'm in London here. Can someone in London or someone in Guelph or Ottawa use a Toronto lawyer? Does it need to be someone local to your city? What does that look like?
Yeah, you're quite right. I mean, one really positive thing, I guess, out of everything that's happened with COVID is innovation related to how we conduct final closings and meetings and so forth. And so short answer is, I mean, the client could be anywhere in the province, let alone the world for that matter, as long as we can get them on and verify identification as per our rules and regulations of the Law Society and as required by the banks. We can conduct and close the business through Zoom, Teams, GoToMeeting. We've even used kind of like FaceTime and WhatsApp as like a worst case scenario. But most people have one of those platforms, GoToMeeting, Zoom or Teams, and it's worked extremely well. To my surprise, I was a bit skeptic because I was a little worried, not that we wouldn't be able to do it on our end, but I was worried about the ease and the uptake by clients on their end, because not everybody's techie, not everybody has a lot of tech or any at all. So it's actually worked out really well. So kudos to my operations team on that. But yeah, you could be anywhere. Now, one thing I would say though is sometimes, depending again on the nature or type of the transaction or the property, it's good to have some local talent, or local opinion. So what we will typically do if it's a property that's rural or like cottage recreational, or we know that, that's a bit of a hot spot for unique things from a property search perspective, we'll get a local conveyancer or law firm to give us the title search results. So we'll still review it, and it'll still cost you to get a search just like you would have to pay through us. But sometimes, for example, if it's in Muskoka Lakes and we know it's an island property, we might get a Muskoka conveyancer to conduct the title search, send it to us. So we know for our review, we've got local talents who might know some ins and outs that we're not familiar about because we don't deal with Muskoka all the time, that we can pass on to our clients to be leery of or aware of, right? Or we actually work with, oddly enough, quite a few real estate investors buying in Sudbury.
Yeah, that's a very common thing right now for GTA investors to be looking, further north where some of the returns are a bit more robust for cash flow.
Exactly. So price point is low, I had somebody buy a property for $75K. I was like, that's a locker in Toronto in a condo, for God's sake. So, that being said, sometimes if we do an initial look at the title search and it looks like there's quite a few interesting things on it, we'll get like a local conveyancer to give us an additional kind of summary. Because Sudbury, just to use as an example, it obviously was a predominant mining, town. So there's a lot of federal rights and reservations on a lot of land up there for mining and all this kind of stuff, which 95+% of it is all really, even though it's registered against your title, it's not applicable because they're not mining it, right? Or not to the same degree as they used to with nickel and everything. But it's still, sometimes important to have. Or the other big thing, if you can remember some of the flooding that occurred, across Canada, and there was one of the biggest, insurance, claims of all time, the flooding that happened kind of in Ontario and so forth. I think it was a year or so ago. Knowing if a property's in a floodplain or in conservation is where local talent has value, right? So not to say you couldn't use us for everything, and you should use us for everything. But if you did use us, what we would probably turn around and do is try to understand a little bit more about where is the property located, and should we, bring in just a little bit more local guidance to be like, hey, floodplain, mineral rights, that kind of stuff. Just and that doesn't happen on a lot of things, right? As you can likely imagine, that is not the volume norm. But that's probably where I would just give a qualification to use us for everything, but keep in mind that we might tell you there's a bit of value because of the type of property that we should maybe just get a little local opinion just to make sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Really appreciate that additional context. Well, you've been a wealth of knowledge for first-time buyers, whether they're looking to buy their first property or maybe get into their first rental property. Any other last pieces of advice before we wrap up this video that you'd want to share with the audience?
If you're a real estate investor, have fun with it. It's exciting, but don't get caught up in the moment. Make a sound business decision. Don't let people pressure you or rush you. Trust your gut. Usually it doesn't do you wrong. So and to all those points, get a great power team, like get a great coaching group, like Matt McKeever's group, or there's other ones out there, but make sure you've got a good group of mentors, to help you, especially if you're just getting into it. Everybody's made mistakes, and so don't. If there's other people out there that coach you, help you miss those mistakes or prevent those mistakes, you might as well take advantage of it, right? And get a great power team, lawyer, insurance rep, mortgage broker, accountant, and don't be afraid to call us. We'd rather hear from you early and be able to really understand where you are and where you want to go, than not be able to help you plan for that and then just be reactionary. So don't be afraid to reach out. I'm not going to send you a bill.
Absolutely. Really appreciate it, Ryan. We'll throw a link to Ryan and Carson Law's contact information in the video description down below for anyone that wants to reach out or jump on a call. And again, just really appreciate you sharing your wealth of wisdom and experience with the audience, Ryan.
Thanks again, Matt. Thanks as always.
Thanks again to Ryan for spending the time to really just break down for us what we can expect when closing on a property. If you've never closed on a property before, this can actually be a really scary process. And as Ryan and I discussed throughout this video, lawyers aren't that expensive when we're doing real estate transactions, so don't be scared to reach out to someone. In fact, a lot of real estate investors get themselves into sticky or tight situations because they don't reach out to a lawyer soon enough. So again, if you're looking to reach out to a great real estate lawyer, I encourage you to check out Ryan at Carson Law. We're going to throw links to all his stuff in the video description down below. Jump over, hit him up, learn more. But whatever you do, make sure you've got the right power team member on your power team. If you don't feel comfortable asking them questions, there's a good chance they're not the right power team member for you. If you guys enjoyed this video, if you're enjoying this series of videos with Ryan from Carson Law, what I need you to do is jump in the comment section, give us some feedback, show us some support. At the end of the day, a lot of you are the silent majority and you don't leave a lot of comments, or really the only time you comment is to bitch. And well, you know, I'm getting used to that. I've been doing this for a while. A lot of my guests, this is their sole exposure to social media, guys. So it's actually quite important that you show them some support. It makes me feel good too. But jump in that comment section. Let us know what other questions do you have for Ryan on the next video when we catch up with him and Carson Law.